Ava and Drew, the partnership that could wreak havoc or implode spectacularly. Let us start with the alliance, because Ava formally proposing a partnership to Drew is one of those moments that sounds like the beginning of a plan and is actually the beginning of a very complicated question, which is whether these two specific people, with these specific histories and these specific personalities, are actually capable of working together without eventually doing to each other exactly what they intend to do to their common enemies. Start with what they share, because understanding the genuine connection between them is what makes this alliance feel like something more than pure convenience. Both of them are single parents to daughters. Scout is growing up in the middle of a war that her father has declared on essentially everyone around him. Avery has grown up with a father who has spent her entire life in the orbit of danger, and that father, Sonny, is the common enemy that has pushed Ava and Drew toward each other. The shared experience of raising a daughter in Port Charles while navigating the specific complications that these two people navigate is not nothing. It creates a kind of understanding that does not require explanation. They are also connected through Franco. Not superficially, through the specific, irreplaceable kind of connection that comes from someone who mattered enormously to both of them. Ava was close to Franco in a way that the rest of Port Charles rarely fully understood. He was her friend, genuinely, in a world where Ava does not have many of those. And Franco was Drew's older foster brother. Not just a connection by circumstance, but a person who physically protected Drew when he was a toddler, who stepped between Drew and something terrible when Drew was too small to protect himself. The fact that both of them carry Franco in a specific and meaningful way is the kind of shared grief that creates unexpected bonds. They have both lost an older child. Drew lost Oscar, the brain tumor that took his son while Oscar was still so young, the specific agony of watching a child die while being unable to do anything to prevent it. Ava lost Kiki in the most violent and senseless of ways, murdered by someone who should never have had access to her, and carried that loss into a transformation that many people in Port Charles saw, but not everyone gave her credit for. Both of them understand what it means to love a child and then not have that child in the world anymore. That understanding does not require words between people who share it. And both of them have done things that reasonable people would call morally corrupt. Drew stole his nephew's wife. Ava has done things considerably worse than that in her past, things that belong to earlier chapters of her story, things she has lived with and been changed by. Neither of them is operating from a position of clean hands. Neither of them is asking the other to pretend otherwise. That shared moral complexity is actually part of what makes the alliance feel possible. There is no performance of virtue required from either side. Now here is the piece that makes this so dramatically volatile. Ava proposes the alliance. She is the one who walks into it with intention, with a framework, with a specific vision of what working together could produce. That means Ava is the architect. And Drew is someone who does not comfortably accept other people's architectures. He builds his own. He has been doing exactly that since he came back from the lake, constructing his revenge landscape with his own tools and his own timeline and his own rules. The question of whether Drew can operate within an alliance that Ava is steering, rather than one he is controlling, is the fault line underneath everything they're trying to build. Because Drew at his worst, the version of Drew that emerged from months of paralysis and stored grievance, is not someone who shares well. He is someone who uses. And if Ava becomes useful to Drew in a specific way and then stops being useful, what Drew does with the alliance at that point is not governed by loyalty or gratitude. It is governed by the calculation of the moment. Ava, on the other hand, has her own version of this problem. Betrayal does not require Ava to feel particularly guilty before she acts on it. She has demonstrated across her entire history in Port Charles that when the situation changes and a different choice becomes strategically superior, she makes it. She is honest about this to herself in ways that make her more predictable than she appears. You always know Ava will do what serves Ava. The question is whether what serves Ava and what serves Drew stay aligned long enough for the alliance to produce something. The Sonny problem gives them common ground for now. Sonny's warning put them in the same category and gave them the same external pressure. As long as that pressure exists and as long as Sonny is the shared threat, the alliance has a logic that both of them can follow. But Port Charles has seen enough of these arrangements to know how they end. The moment the shared enemy is managed, or the moment one of them decides they can get what they want faster by moving against the other than by continuing to work together. Everything the alliance built becomes the material for the destruction. And the specific combination of Drew's burning grievance and Ava's flexible loyalty is exactly the kind of pairing that history suggests ends badly for at least one of them. Nina is the wild card sitting in the middle of all of this. Drew counts Nina as an enemy. Ava counts Nina as a friend, or something close enough to friendship that the distinction matters. If the alliance between Ava and Drew ever requires choosing between those positions, or if Nina finds out about it and responds in ways that force Ava to decide which relationship she is protecting, the fault line cracks open. And a crack in this particular foundation does not produce a small fracture. It produces the kind of collapse that sends pieces flying in every direction. Port Charles, if Ava and Drew get this right even temporarily, is in for something it has not experienced before. Two people with significant intelligence, significant resources of different kinds, significant motivation, and the specific lack of conventional moral restriction that has defined both of them at various points, working in the same direction at the same time. That is not a small thing. The havoc that combination could generate is real. But Port Charles has also seen enough to know that dynamic duos who are too similar in their essential natures tend to become each other's worst enemies faster than they become each other's greatest assets. Watch this one closely, because the ending of this alliance, whenever it comes and however it arrives, is going to be at least as dramatic as the beginning. Where are Elizabeth's boys, and why does it matter? Now let's talk about something that has been quietly nagging at the audience for a while, because Elizabeth is one of the most enduringly important characters in Port Charles, and the conversation about her sons is one that deserves to be had directly and with real feeling. Elizabeth is one of those characters who has been so consistently present, so reliably excellent, so genuinely woven into the fabric of the show, that it is easy to stop noticing how much has changed around her. And one of the things that has changed most significantly is the absence of her children from the canvas in any meaningful way. Cameron went to Stanford. He left with a broken heart and a scholarship and the specific kind of exit that felt like a character finding their next chapter rather than saying goodbye forever. He has come back for visits. He has been referenced. He exists in the Port Charles world in the theoretical sense. But his actual presence, the warm, slightly chaotic, deeply loving energy he brought to his friend group and to Elizabeth's life, has been missing. And the friend group he belonged to has transformed completely in his absence. Jocelyn is a WSB agent. Trina is launching a music career. The people he used to move through the world with are completely different people now. That transformation is exactly the kind of thing that creates the conditions for a meaningful return, not nostalgia, but genuine story. Who is Cameron now?
Who are these people to him?
What does coming home mean when home is barely recognizable? Elizabeth would love to have him back. That is the simplest truth of it. She is a mother who has spent years in proximity to her son's absence, and having Cameron close again would change the texture of her days in ways that matter. Jake is the piece of this that connects most directly to current storyline. Jason is in Port Charles right now, trying to be a better father to Danny, making specific and public commitments to being present in a way he has not been before. And Jake, Jason's son with Elizabeth, the child who grew up with an absent father and who has carried the specific resentment of that absence into his relationship with Jason, is somewhere at art school, unreferenced, not part of the story that Jason is telling about himself as a father. That absence is worth examining. Because the story Jason is telling himself about becoming a present father is incomplete without Jake. Danny has always been more accepting of Jason's complicated presence and complicated absences. Jake has not. Jake grew up knowing his father was alive and choosing other things over being there. That wound is real, and it is not healed simply because Jason made a different decision about Danny. It requires Jason to also make a different decision about Jake. And Jake to decide whether he wants to let him. The relationship between Danny and Jake, two brothers who have never really had the chance to build a bond, whose father's presence or absence has shaped both of them but in different ways, is a story that Port Charles has been leaving untold for too long. Bringing Jake home creates the possibility of telling it. And Aiden. Lucky took Aiden on what was supposed to be a short adventure when he left Port Charles, and the short adventure has apparently extended into an undefined absence. Aiden is at the age where he should be in school, should be part of the Port Charles teen world, should be around Charlotte and near Elizabeth in the way that children his age are near their mothers. His absence has been the quietest of the three. Aiden was always the gentlest of Elizabeth's boys, the one who fit least comfortably into the louder energies of the others. But it is felt. The teen canvas in Port Charles is active and interesting right now. Charlotte is present and causing the specific kind of trouble that Cassadine daughters cause. The music storyline has Trina and Gio as its center. The stalker situation adds danger. And there is room, real, specific, story-rich room, for young people with roots in Port Charles to come back and be part of what is happening rather than existing as references in other people's conversations. Elizabeth deserves to have her children near her. Not as a reward or a gift, as a story. As the natural continuation of a mother's life in a town that has kept her sons at arm's length for reasons that made sense one at a time and make considerably less sense when you add them all together. Bring them home. The audience is ready. And more importantly, the story is ready.